Can we see that? X is the necessary condition of Y. Y, therefore X. Now, granted, I know that no atheist is going to accept that when I plug in God or the preconditions or anything like that. But the structure of the argument is not, my argument is God exists, therefore God exists. Okay, do you see that anywhere in that? Did I ever say, I know God exists because God exists. I presuppose God, therefore God exists. Do you see that in it? Is that the same as this? No, it's not. This is, there's nothing, it should be self-evident in a way. I don't believe in self-evident truth, but in a limited sense, right? It should be obvious to any reasonable person that this is not a fallacy. If X is a necessary condition of Y, and if Y is the case, then clearly, by necessity, X is the case. It's very simple. Okay, it's not rocket science. I know people get confused over transcendental arguments. They think this is some wild, obtuse, out there thing. It's actually really simple. What's Father Deacon's analogy he always makes? Cake, right? What are the necessary conditions of having a cake? Flour, eggs, sugar, icing. Okay? I have a cake. If I have a cake, then by necessity, I have the necessary conditions of cake. Flour, icing, eggs, milk, whatever. I don't know. Whatever makes a cake. I don't know. I don't need that soy Pillsbury Doughboy diet that old John Lennox is over there eating. Okay? I eat the carnivore diet. But if I did eat cakes, then by necessity, the cake would include the necessary elements of cake to have cakeness, namely flour, eggs, milk, sugar, etc., etc., etc. To quote Bernardo from West Side Story. So, do you guys see this? Because I just wanted a little minute to rant there about the bottom of the barrel IQ stuff going on in the atheist comment sections. Because there's probably at least 400 or 500 atheists in Matt Dillahunty's comment section on our debate and underneath my debate on my channel with him. They're literally saying, this guy thinks that saying God exists is the argument for God's existence. And they literally think that saying a transcendental argument is word salad. Okay, this is not word salad. This is very simple. So we're dealing with severely mentally incapacitated individuals, right? That's what we're dealing with here. And ultimately, remember, atheism isn't primarily an intellectual problem. Atheism is a spiritual problem, as many of the elders and fathers and saints say. Them transcendentals or categories or preconditions. We'll call them transcendental preconditions. We're just going to list some. And somebody asked the other day, is there a perfect list of all of them? No. How could there be? Let's just look at a few, and we start to see that although on the surface this argument might seem really obscure, it's not. It's actually pretty... Man, these lights just don't work with this. Okay, so let's take the first one. Time and space. Okay, now this is a transcendental category that you cannot empirically verify. And don't give me the low IQ reply of, well, I have a watch. Your watch is not the same thing as time itself. Time itself is some kind of abstract category. Doesn't matter what you want to define it as. Point is that it's not proven to exist merely by empirical investigation. Yes, I know it's a measurement. It's a measurement of the rate at which light travels or whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't care about how you define it. The point is that it's not defined or known merely by empirical investigation. But it's presupposed in the way humans interact in the world, right? We experience the world from beginning to middle to end. There's no human being on the face of the planet that experiences things in reverse, right? And we also experience and learn things within a spatial field, a visio-spatio-temporal field, That's how we learn things. There's not a human being on the planet who does it in a different way. We are beings constituted such that we learn things in a spatio-temporal field of vision, right? In the here and the now. Well, how do you prove that empirically? You can't. It's an assumed transcendental precondition of knowledge and experience. The self. You cannot empirically demonstrate that you have a self. It's presupposed in all actions of cognition, communication, noetic energies, ratiocinations, etc. There's no test tube, no microscope that's going to show you the self. That words have meaning and that they can convey meaning to other persons. It's another transcendental category. There's no empirical verification that you are transmitting the right meaning to another brain, another bunch of gray matter. It has to be assumed. The past. The past is a transcendental category that you cannot empirically prove exists or existed. It is assumed in the way that we as humans experience time and space and operate. Universals. Right? There's no empirical verification for universal categories, invariant concepts, numbers, etc., but that we know they exist. Ethics, right? Where is the ethics under the rock? Where in the microscope? Where in the test tube are the ethics? They are nowhere there. So they are assumed. These are just examples of things that are, and again, you can come up with more. But these are examples of transcendental preconditions for the possibility of even having knowledge at all in this world and operating in this world. None of these things are proven or known by empirical investigation. Are they related to empirical investigation? Yes, but they are presupposed in empirical investigation, and they are not the immediate subject of any empirical proof or investigation. So does that mean we cannot know these things or prove these things? No. That's where the transcendental argument comes in, because it is an argument based on the denial of any of these things as leading to absurdity. So when we come to the question of God and God's existence and the mind of God, the mind of Christ, etc., that I just mentioned in the Stephen Clark paper that I cited in my paper, we can ask another question. How do these different things relate to one another? Because our experience of the world is not chopped up into only having spatio-temporal relations without a self, right? No, that would be nonsensical. Spatio-temporal experience assumes a self that's having the spatio-temporal experience. And when we speak or write words that have meaning to convey that meaning to another chunk of gray matter in somebody else's head, it assumes that they have a self. It assumes that these words and these meanings are entering into spatio-temporal relations to convey that meaning, becoming mediums for information being conveyed from one person to the next. What it is to be a self is partly bound up with the past. I'm not an abstract category. I'm not a Platonic form. I'm not the number 7. I'm a person who has a past, a life that began at a point in time. Part of my past is partly what makes me up, and you and everybody else, right? So there's no neutral kind of, I don't know what it would even be, like some abstract neutral self that doesn't have experiences. That's impossible, right? Universals, universal categories, universal laws of logic, universal in terms of predicates. These are presupposed in speaking. So the point is that when you just take a little sampling here of these kinds of things that are not like material things, and you say, well, these don't operate on their own, they all work together. Yeah, exactly. So how do they work together if there's not a God that holds them all together? That's the argument. Because what Platonism at least shows, in the Platonic argument that Clark was interacting with, It can only go so far, and then it's terrible. It screws up at the key point, because they can point out some of these things, and then they say, "Oh, and the answer is just that it's all a number one. It's all just the one, man." No, it's not. You need a mind, and the human mind is not enough to encapsulate and relate all of these things together in all of their different particulars in every different human being's life and existence. But if you believe in God the way that we speak about God, that's exactly what he does. He fulfills this precondition. He is the ultimate precondition for all the other preconditions. That's the argument. So I hope that's helpful. It does at first seem a little kind of abstract and, whoa, that's weird, what? But I think when you understand it, it's like, oh, wow, yeah. What else would it be? But nothing else even makes any sense if it's not God. I mean, it's not the human mind. The human mind can't do this stuff. No finite mind can do it. And the atheist can't even get past like why there's even needs to be a mind anyway. Because they don't even think they have a mind. As they sit there touting their own mental acumen, which they actually don't have. That's the great irony of that. But anyway. So I hope that's helpful for the transcendental argument question. Dalton, have you been sneaking out of Roadhouse? Have you been sneaking out of busting butts down at the Roadhouse, those drunk rednecks, and doing your Zen philosophy? And macking on Kelly Lynch, Dalton? Can you rip a dude's throat out, Dalton? If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch Roadhouse.